Are you using Canon C-Log or C-Log3 profiles in your camera? Well, if you are, Canon is lying to you.
That's right, if you're exposing C-Log3 just by eye using your monitor and it looks right, it's actually underexposed. You'll see it in the shadows, the noise is there. And I've done a few videos complaining about the Canon R5 C having noise issues, but it was actually just me not realizing that I'm exposing badly. That's my fault, and I apologize for that. However, I was exposing as per Canon's recommendations. And Canon's recommendations, particularly for false color, work really well for Canon C-Log2. It's kind of a what you see is what you get profile when it comes to exposure, particularly with the Canon C70.
You see, when you expose Canon C-Log and C-Log3 normally, you're actually underexposing the footage. What you should be doing is exposing to the right, exposing a little bit higher, and then bringing it back down in post. So Canon C-Log3 has better latitude in the highlights, so we can expose higher without sacrificing any detail. But here's the thing, exposing to the right is all well and good, but how far is too far? And what's the sweet spot?
I normally use false color to expose my scenes. It's fast, it's visual, and it works great, most of the time. Sky's blown out, shows up as red. Crushed shadows, purple. Middle gray, green, right? Skin tone, pink.
But is it Canon? Is it really?
You see, when using Canon C-Log3, putting middle gray into the green, like Canon says, the footage is still noisy, it's still off. And when I shift up and exposed middle gray to pink, bam! Perfect exposure, cleaner shadows, beautiful skin tones. And to show it's Canon lying and not me, here's Canon's false color, middle gray set to pink. And here's the exact same shot with Blackmagic's Video Assist false color. As you can see with Blackmagic, it shows up as green. So when I'm shooting an interview scene, I use gray card and false color. But here's the bigger problem. I can't carry a gray card everywhere I go. And it's not always practical to use a gray card for every single shot, particularly with run and gun scenarios. So unless I'm in a controlled setup, I'm guessing. So I end up overexposing skin tones and then pulling it down in post, but that's inefficient and it just doesn't look as good when you push the skin tones too hard.
So what's the fix? How do we get it to work without a gray card? We're going old school. We're going to use zebras.
All right, so to do this, we're going to set up a controlled lighting scene, and then we're going to use false color to expose correctly using a gray card, and using Canon's false color, I'm going to set it to pink because this means I'm getting that beautiful Goldilocks point for exposure. Then I will turn on zebras and adjust the percentage for the zebras until we're getting the zebras to land on our gorgeous model's skin tone highlights. There we go, and because I'm recording the VO before I actually do this, I'm going to put the skin tone percentage zebra on screen. Wow! I'd never have guessed it was that percentage. Isn't that amazing? Cool, check it out. Look at that number. Oof. Oh yeah. Now on my camera, I've got false color set to this custom button right here. It means I can flick it on and off very quickly and check which part of my scene is too bright or too dark. I can keep the zebra for skin tones turned on at all times. It's a bit distracting, but it's worth it for good exposure. And then I can still check the rest of the scene very quickly using false color. Saves me having to have two different zebras on screen at the same time or having to flick between the two zebras. Using this method means I always know where properly exposed skin tones are, and I can quickly check the rest of the scene is looking good too. If I'm in an environment with consistent or continuous lighting, then once I get my exposure nailed in, I can turn the zebras off, and I know it's going to be looking good. Alright, so let's take this out into the field, use this method to get some footage, then bring it back into the edit suite and see if we're getting that sweet spot for exposure. Okay, so this first test that I did was not what I hoped it would be. First of all, I used the R8, which, I have to be honest, doesn't really suit this method very well. You can't use zebras and false color at the same time, and this will likely be the case for the R6 II and the R5 II as well, I'm guessing. Don't know for sure on that one. So in order to check sky detail while I was using zebras for checking skin tone exposure, I would have to push the button that I set for zebras to turn them off, push the button I set for false color to put that on, check, press the button again to turn it off, and then press that other button again to turn the zebras back on again. So this was a bit of a tedious process to have to do for a lot of the shots to make sure that exposure was good for both the sky and the subject. As well as this, the zebras are not very well implemented with the stills first hybrid systems from Canon. The zebras are themselves actually much larger than they are in the cinema system, so they overlap between different exposures. They just don't give you the best confidence when you're looking on the screen or through the EVF, particularly when the subject is small in the frame. So because of the unreliability of the zebras, I ended up overexposing or underexposing a lot of the shots. My hope was that I'd be able to load in all the footage and copy the exact same setting from one to the other and not have to adjust the exposure change in post because everything's consistently exposed for skin tones. And as you can see, just slipping through and selecting some of these, I know that minus 2.50, when I put it into Cinematch on the exposure slider, that is the adjustment that I'm aiming for, because that is the adjustment that I do to all my interview shots when I know I've nailed exposure for skin tone. So I was hoping I'd just copy and paste that onto all these different clips. And as you can see, if I just go through all of these different clips here, and we're looking over here, by the way, on this side of the screen, right over here. So yeah, slipping through these shots, this first one's fine, clipping through, minus 3.38, minus 1.9. Well, that one is right, minus 2.50, that one's okay. Minus 3.33. As you can see, most of the time I'm overexposing, and I think that was to do with how the zebras appeared on the highlights versus the rest of the skin tone, and that might have been just me messing up. I should have just gone, if I see zebras on skin tone, leave it. Whether it's highlights or the rest of the skin, it shouldn't really matter, because it's plus or minus 5, so I should have figured that one out. However, most of the shots were in the right ballpark, and when I adjusted it, most of them seemed to fall into that sweet spot for exposure. Some did not, because of the difficulty in seeing the zebras on the subject's skin. And hey, maybe I just wasn't practiced enough with it, so I decided to test this out again, but this time I took the Canon R5 C, which is one of the cinema line, and this means that I can use false color and zebras at the same time. So I could keep zebras on the entire time and just press one button to switch on and off false color to quickly check exposure. So I took this on a family outing, and this time the method absolutely worked. The reason I say it worked is because pretty much every single shot, if we go through here, again, we're looking at the exposure adjustments here. Every single shot is set to minus 2.5, and the exposure on the skin tone is spot on, except for one shot. And that was the very first one where I absolutely underexposed. And you can see that we have minus 1.18 rather than minus 2.50. That means I have underexposed the shot, so I had to increase it in post. And as a result, there is absolutely noise in the shadow. Another thing that I used with it was the ND wheel adapter for EF lenses. I could see instantly when I adjusted it to the correct exposure. So when we were changing lighting scenarios, and you can see this in a few clips, when I was changing from light to dark or dark to light, I adjusted the wheel until I saw zebras on the skin tone and then stopped. So there was no going back and forth to get exposure. Like when you see a focus going forward and back, it just doesn't look right. It's distracting. It would be the same with changing exposure, going bright, dark. Oh no, where is that sweet spot? So this meant that I was wheeling to the exact exposure and stopping, and it just looked really smooth. And this lighting scenario was actually very difficult because we were moving from really bright areas to really quite dark areas in the shade, and then there was dappled light that was causing a bit of havoc. And I was constantly adjusting the exposure using the ND wheel. But each time it was so quick to make the adjustment, see the zebras on the skin, and know that it's correct. Another thing I did was, rather than worry about the zebras appearing only on the highlights, I just put it on, as soon as I saw it on skin tone, I was happy. And because it's plus or minus 5, it meant that there's that little bit of leeway either way, but still, it just looked great. As soon as I saw zebras on skin, I knew the exposure was correct. So what does this mean for this method? Having zebras to signal proper skin tone exposure at all times is unbelievably helpful. Yes, the implementation in Canon's still first hybrids, it could be a lot better. It's not nearly as good as in the cinema line, and you can't use false color and zebras at the same time, which was really the most useful way to use this method. Whether they can add this in firmware, that would be great, but I'd rather see them introduce the ability to adjust false color so that I can actually put skin tone to what it should be, and then I don't have to use zebras at all, just false color. So Canon, if you do watch this, please let us adjust the values for false color. And to head off anybody in the comments writing, why don't you just use waveform? I really don't like having a section of my screen blocked off, and you can turn it on and off and you can make it more transparent, but it is much more distracting to look at that than to see instantly on the entire scene where there are localized issues. So example, here I can see that this is overexposed, I can see that this is overexposed, I can see that my skin tone is correctly exposed right here. With waveform, the crunched y-axis, like, it's really crunched, so it's hard for me to see where is exactly right, where is exactly going to be 60% plus or minus 5. Also, the x-axis, I don't know where exactly on the screen that would be, and I wouldn't know the difference between that being overexposed and that being overexposed. So how do you tell the difference between that and that when it's on a waveform? So this is way more useful, having false color, to know exactly where on the screen I have an overexposed area or underexposed area, and know exactly on the subject skin it is correctly exposed, rather than having to guess where they are in that waveform. So that's my reason. If you guys like using waveform, great, but this method works way better for me, and it's way faster, and I think more accurate because it shows you exactly on the screen where the issues are. So I'm still going to use false color to expose when I'm in a controlled lighting situation, and use zebras when I'm running and gunning. And hey, you might find that false color works best for you, even with Canon's values being a little bit off. I've used it quite a lot so far, and it hasn't been completely unreliable, just not ideal. And you might not like zebras on your monitor when you're trying to film. It is distracting.
Either way, I've got more tools at my disposal and I'm using my camera smarter. This isn't about bashing Canon and their false color implementation. It's about understanding the tools that we work with. And we all want to get the best footage out of our cameras, and that starts with great exposure. And one more thing to note, I have dialed this in for Caucasian skin tones because that is the predominant skin tone where I work and where I live. So you need to adapt this to the most predominant demographic where you live or that you work with. I really hope this video has been useful for you, or at least entertained you as you watch the guy struggle with false color and zebras. If you do have any exposure tips of your own, please do put those in the comments and share with the rest of the community. Critique is also welcome. Otherwise, I shall see you in the next video. Take care. Get some golden light, mother... Are you exposing C-Log?
Yeah.
Are you exposing correctly?
Yeah.
Good girl. How far is too far? Where's that sweet spot? And how can you reliably catch that? Oh my God, what the hell is that? Either way, I've got more tools at my disposal and I'm using my camera smarter. This isn't about bashing... Whoop. Bollocks. This is why you bring your tripod.